Is there a feeling at the White House, as there is in so much of America, that the world's bad boys are not listening in the way they used to?
Look, there's no question the president has described the time that we're living in as an inflection point where autocrats, tyrants, and terrorists are trying to tear down the rules-based order, as we call it, that was put in place after World War II, an order that the United States has helped shape and lead since the end of World War II. And there's no question that there are organizations and nation-states that want to tear that down, that want to diminish American leadership on the world stage, which is why we've been working so hard in the last 3.5 years to restore our alliances and partnerships, invest more in our national defense, partner more with countries and organizations in the Indo-Pacific to stand up to tensions there. That's been a key focus of the president for the entire time he's been in office.
I understand that. I also understand that if we look at the Middle East before President Biden took office, things were awfully calm. I know you're going to talk to Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the withdrawal was a disaster. Vladimir Putin had not invaded Ukraine, and the Chinese were much more in check in the Pacific. The North Koreans weren't firing missiles. How are we to say that this isn't President Biden and his team, frankly, talking about solving a problem that they allowed to be created?
Well, I got to just check the facts there. China was absolutely still conducting bellicose operations. The North Koreans absolutely were still working on their ballistic missile and nuclear programs. Terrorists were, in fact, striking our troops in Iraq and Syria, so much so that the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, actually considered closing down our embassy in Baghdad. So there was a lot of this activity going on, and to put this at the feet of this administration, I think, just flies in the face of the facts. What we have done, unlike the previous administration, we've actually invested in alliances and partnerships. NATO's 2 countries now stronger than it was before. And we've actually elevated our relationships in the Indo-Pacific to a much more strategic level. We're working on now getting Australia a ballistic missile submarine capability. There's been an awful lot of work to try to meet the challenges of this inflection point that we're in.
All right. All of that said, the president now is a lame duck president in every sense of the word. Here he was last night talking about his foreign policy. Take a listen.
I will keep working to ensure America remains strong and secure and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world.
Maybe not at war, but certainly in places there are American troops in harm's way. I think we can all agree on that. Is there any concern that the next 6 months, the same autocrats, you call them autocrats, I'd call them bad boys around the world, who will exploit, I think, which is sort of an unprecedented time in American domestic politics, to make mischief?
There is no time when we've ever had a presidential transition where there hasn't been actors who have considered trying to exploit that and take advantage of it. So we're obviously going to stay vigilant to that going forward. We've got a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to national security and our foreign policy objectives. And as the president said last night, we're going to stay focused on them. We don't expect that the leaders around the world are going to expect anything less from Joe Biden than continued American leadership on the world stage. And we're fully up to that task. So is the president.
All right. I heard you both in the briefing and in other interviews strongly and vigorously condemn the protests yesterday that we saw during the Prime Minister of Israel's speech. You spoke, I think, candidly and emotionally about that. You also said of these protests that are talking about killing the Jews and Hamas is coming and burning American flags, that they are funded by Iran, that we can now trace that back. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to stop these protests and for these protests not to happen if we were not giving sanction waivers to the same Iranian regime that is funding these protests?
Well, so a couple of things here. Number one, what I said was, we know, because the Director of National Intelligence made it public, that Iran is trying to sow discord here in the United States and is, in fact, funding some of this protest activity and encouraging some of this protest activity. But I don't think you can look at the wide swath of protest activity in the last few months and say that Iran was behind it all. It just doesn't comport with the facts. They're not. There's a lot of organic concern in the United States by Americans who feel passionately about what's going on in Gaza.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.